Hi, I'm Sarah Rosso. I'm here with Matt Mullenweg, co-founder of WordPress and founder of Automatic. And we're here in Milan. And we've just done the first international WordCamp here in Italy. And we had a few questions for Matt. So Matt, one of the things we were talking about in Italy is how your age is a really good example of someone who's accomplished something so early in life. You had a great idea, you went after it, and I'm curious, now what things are you finding yourself have to learn?
So the things that I've been learning a lot about recently are sort of the scaling on the organizational or human side of things. We've sort of figured out, like you said, we had an idea. I don't think it was a great idea. It was, something that had been done many times, but the execution was different than had been done previously. So we sort of executed on that, but now we're starting to grow the organization from, going from 1 to 2 people was really hard, 2 to 5 people, 5 to 15, and now we're, in the low 20s, and we're going to be expanding a lot, and that's challenging. As we're also virtual. We have no offices. There's no office. There's no address. The address is my apartment, and the people are distributed across the world. So that's interesting as well.
So for those that don't know, WordPress.org is the nonprofit side of WordPress, which is community based, and that's where a lot of the support comes from. Is a community of people that are willing to share information and help each other with bugs, identifying bugs and fixing problems. There's another side of WordPress, which is Automatic, and they're starting to offer kind of a myriad of products, I would say, from Akismet, which is one of the most popular anti-spam in the world, I guess you could say. I mean,
it's one of the only ones in the world.
Yeah, okay. Right. And I'm curious, maybe one, if you could first talk about what Automatics, because this is the profit side, how you are monetizing the company, or where the profit's coming from, or at least what your business model is, briefly. I mean.
So the tricky thing in the U.S. is that companies, a corporation in the U.S., a for-profit corporation, only has one responsibility. It's not to the community, it's not to the environment, it's not to anything like that. It's a fiduciary responsibility to its stockholders. Now, if you want to be a community-minded company, what do you do? So what I did with Automatic was we sort of created this hack where all the intellectual property, all the software, everything like this was on the nonprofit side. So by definition, we can never make that for pay or evil or do anything evil with it. And then we try to align the motives, the for-profit motives of our company is to contribute to that. So that way, the more we want to make money or do better, or more the company expands, the more community benefits, the more the WordPress.org side benefits. So the way we're doing that is by creating services around WordPress and sort of just add-on and hosting, essentially, hosting and services.
How many of, I guess we could say, can you estimate how many blogs are running WordPress?
Some of them. I'd say probably 3 to 4 million.
And some of these are divided onto WordPress.com, which is a hosted service, and then users installing the software, which is open source, and running it on their own servers. Now, the word open source to some people can be very intimidating, I think, because they might think that it means no support or terrible code, or so open source can be intimidating to some people, but I think what we're starting to see is that it's very powerful, and that the community that's behind it is really making it grow and giving it a lot of quality. What do you think the community has contributed to furthering WordPress, maybe even recently, or in the future? What kind of role will they have?
Oh, it's everything. Everything that WordPress has been successful to thus far is a result of the community. We have 0 advertising, so 100% of our users are because someone was a happy user and told their friends. At the time, for the first 3-4 years of development, there was no one paid to work on WordPress. So it was everyone just working in their spare time. And everything else, the documentation, the support forums, the internationalization, the fact that there's a WordCamp Italy here is the result of this open source. And open source is becoming less scary. If you look at the top 5 internet sites in the world, you have Google, built on open source; Yahoo, built on open source; YouTube, built on open source; AOL, built on something weird, no one knows. But the Microsoft stuff is really the only one that's built on proprietary technology. So it's really, if you look at, if I'm starting a website today, I'm a company, and say, what do I know that Google doesn't know? Why would I build on something proprietary when they're not? And that's just the way to go.
If you were to explain WordPress maybe to your mother,
which I still do.
Okay, if you were to explain maybe in layman's terms what WordPress is and how it can be powerful not only to individuals who blog or who don't blog, because it's used on a lot of sites that are not blogs, how could you explain this, what it is, what kind of, in layman's terms, how could you explain it?
So the easiest way to describe it is it's an easy way to publish online. So to create a website. That's at the most basic, right? But then what makes that different from, say, GeoCities? That was around 10 years ago. And so it's more like, kind of like an online journal where you can post your thoughts, easily integrate pictures and video and things like that. And it's well organized. So as a visitor, I come to your blog, the new stuff is always on top, there's archives, you have comments, you just get a lot of this stuff for free. But at the most basic level, you're publishing online.
So recently we had the 2.5.1 now, or .2 that came out, and we saw a big improvement, I think, from maybe the 2.1 family to it was a big change, I think, for this. What do you think are the most interesting features? For example, I'm still using 2.1.
Wow.
I know. I'm thinking.
I gotta go, actually.
But the great thing is it works great. So I mean that is a positive. But what do you think are the incentives for someone to move who's already using WordPress to upgrade?
Well, we try to add new features that make it interesting. Security is, of course, a good reason to upgrade. The older versions might have a security vulnerability. But really, like for example in 2.5, there's a feature where you can take an entire folder of photos and upload them all once. That's actually what my computer is doing right now. It uploads the entire folder of folders and it creates a gallery. And each picture you can have comments on, you can tag the people in them, you can tag the places. That's kind of neat. It's something that we couldn't do in 2.1 because the technology wasn't there yet. So really it's community driven. So the things that the community has asked for and the features we add every single release.
No, so what I was saying is with the 2.5, now it's becoming more powerful for sharing photos. For example, some people may be using an external a photo sharing application or site external to their WordPress blog or their server, and so you would like this to become more of a one-stop shop, but a more inclusive solution for people. Well,
it's both. Like, for example, if you're going to do video today, it's probably better to go to YouTube or Vimeo or Vidler. It's a better experience, right? But people like people like things to be integrated. So we're doing it two things. We're trying to make it easier for you to use Flickr with WordPress and better plugins for that. But we're also trying to make it use, if you just want to stay within WordPress, easy to make a gallery. And that's sort of the baseline functionality.
And what about for video? Are you thinking of doing the same thing?
No. Well, video is very hard because you have large files, you have to process them, you have to convert. It's very technically difficult for us to do inside of WordPress.
Okay. You were mentioning, well, first of all, there were some questions about cache. And that was a big concern.
Cache is good. I like cache. Although I use credit cards mostly these days.
About caching websites and the speed of loading, I guess, larger websites. So what were you sharing on that?
So there's caching built into WordPress, but it could always be better, right? The speed of your website is incredibly important. If you're too slow, people are going to go someplace else. WordPress.com is now one of the largest websites in the world, like definitely in the top 20, depending on how you count it. So we've learned a lot about performance, going from one blog to 3 million. So we're just sort of sharing all that code with the world and the things we've learned to make your WordPress, even though it's not hosted by us, faster.
And one of the other things I remember is that there's hopefully in the future would be a one-button upgrade so that you could push out upgrades like some of the other software that is more client-based. Of course, being on servers throughout the world, this is more difficult. What are you discovering, or what are you guys planning to implement this?
Well, of course, if you're on WordPress.com, you never worry about this, right? It's hassle-free. It just happens magically in the background. But on WordPress.org, which is more powerful, it's tough, right? You have to worry about, are your plugins compatible with the new version? Is your database or your templates going to change, et cetera, et cetera? And fortunately, these are all things that computers are good at. So eventually there'll be a way, I don't know when, but at some point I would just love it to be completely automatic. Not just because that's the name of the company, but because that's what we aspire to. Like you said, one button and that should be done. And in the meantime, like, we added this one-click upgrades for plugins in the latest version in 2.5. Another reason for you to upgrade. But we're going to be doing it as well we're going to experiment with it in the core. It's difficult, to be honest, because web applications don't normally modify themselves. It's just not a paradigm that's happened yet. So we're breaking some new ground, but it's important. So we're investing a lot of time and research into it.
One of the things we talked about also was a little bit of a disconnect between some people that are very technical and can use WordPress, very easily, and those that want to have more control over or what they publish, but maybe they're not sure how to implement or work in a database. You mentioned something about WordPress ninjas. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Well, it's basically, this is already happening in the WordPress community. There's just completely amazing people who donate a huge amount of their time to help other folks for no monetary or anything else reward. They just enjoy helping other people. So I think we want to encourage that more and also expand the program. So if you have a problem upgrading your WordPress, you're on 2.1, maybe you're scared to upgrade because you're not sure about your plugins, maybe you just don't have the time, there's someone out there who's willing to help you. And connecting the both of you is sort of the idea behind WordPress Ninjas. And Ninjas just sounds kind of cool. Like Apple has the Genius Bar. We want to have a Genius Bar for WordPress, but Genius Bar was already taken, so we're going to call it Ninjas.
What do you think is the biggest challenge in convincing brick and mortar companies like CNN or that are a little more old-fashioned to adopt something that's open source, to change over to this kind of content management system?
So that is a hard one. So I would say that some businesses, like CNN that you refer to, don't need convincing at all. I mean, they totally see that this is where media is shifting, and they want to be part of it, right? And they have done a fantastic job at sort of embracing blogs, at publishing in a new way, and connecting their authors to their readers. It's pretty neat. For some businesses, probably will never be impacted by blogs, and there's the same businesses that aren't impacted by the web. I mean, the cafe we went to over there doesn't need a website, doesn't need a blog, doesn't need anything else. But quite honestly, websites that don't, other businesses, like for example, anything that deals with customers on an international basis, or one that sells something, not having a blog in a few years is going to be like not having an email address today. It's like, where are you? You're not in this century. What do you think?
Yeah, I think, I actually think that WordPress should be at some point disassociated from blog, because I think you should associate it with a content management, that it can be a site, it can be using a forum, using these other modules that hopefully will become easier for anyone to implement, chat or whatever, so that you can make a total solution and not think of it as a blogging platform, because I think that would be an aspect of it, that you can publish material in chronological order if you want,
but
with
you can also do other stuff. I think the definition of blog is evolving though, because actually when I was first getting started with WordPress, two things happened. When people were launching blogging networks like AOL, launched AOL Journals, MSN Spaces, and the reason they did is because they did focus groups that said, oh, blog is a scary word. It sounds like something that you have in your drain and you need to pour something in it to get rid. It doesn't sound sexy. But that's completely changed over the past few years. Now CMS is an abbreviation, it's an acronym, it scares people away. They don't know what it means, they're scared to ask. But blogs, everyone sees one, everyone reads them. You hear about them on the news, on the radio, it's everywhere. So I think that the definition of blog will start to include websites.
Actually, yeah, I think that does make more sense, because it is a little scary to hear an acronym when you...
But hopefully in the future, people just call it, I'm getting a WordPress. I'm WordPressing,
Thank you very much for your time, Matt.
It's my pleasure.
Thanks a lot.